Welcome to Shaped by Faith. I'm Theresa Rowe, where we shape our bodies and hearts for God's purposes. My guest on the phone from Galesburg, Illinois, is Sherrell Wallace. She is an amazing lady, and I can't wait for you to hear her story. But she's a founder of Living Inside Out T-shirt, and she also has a new podcast called Living Inside Out by Faith. Welcome to Shaped by Faith, Sherrell.
Hi, Teresa. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited you're on the phone. I love your T-shirt, and they make a statement, and I want to kind of go over how we both met and how we got connected, really how God connected us together. And I'll kind of start, and then you can kind of finish it up, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so I'm teaching Pilates, or I'm getting ready to teach Pilates in one of my classes, and this lady, one of my students, walks in, and she's wearing this T-shirt that says Living Inside Out. And it immediately caught my attention, and because the Lord had been speaking to me about that exact message. And so I asked her where she got the T-shirt, and I'll let you take it from there, Sherrell.
Okay, yes, you're referring to Daphne.
Yep.
Daphne is, she's someone I met during a women's conference I went to in St. Louis, Illinois. It was the Joyce Meyer Women's Conference. And at that conference, there's like 30,000 women that are there. And so I happened to meet Daphne, and her mom were there attending the conference. And we met, and we ended up sitting sort of next to each other, or close in the same vicinity, like all throughout the conference. It was a 3-day conference. And I think during the last day, I decided that I would give her and her mom a T-shirt, that I was my Living Inside Out T-shirts. And so I just gave it to her, and she thanked me, and I sort of lost track of her after that. But yeah, I mean, we were at this conference, like I said, there was like 30,000 women there, and by chance I met her and her mom, and I gave her a shirt.
Yeah, and then what are the odds? And then she walks in my class, and I'm like, wow. I mean, that's how God is, isn't he? I mean, he's totally amazing. Well, before we get into the T-shirt and then your podcast, I want the listeners to hear your background and your story and what your life was like. So what was your life like growing up?
Growing up, I was raised in church. My mom took me and my sister to church, pretty much every Sunday. And so, I lived in a small town. At my church, there was, all my cousins, and everyone we all went to church together. So, life was pretty good. I was sort of a shy person, so I wasn't very outspoken or anything, but God He was an important part of my life at the time. I even got baptized at a young age. So
okay, did you continue your journey, your faith journey?
I continued pretty much until when I got old enough to move out of my parents' house. I was living on my own, and I sort of stopped going to church. It just didn't. It's not like I didn't have God in my life, but I just felt like going to church wasn't quite necessary, I guess. And so as I stopped going to church, I started, just living in the world and doing worldly things, and, God sort of took a back seat. He wasn't as important in my life as he probably should have been.
So what was the turning point in your life when you turned back towards God and became very close to him?
Well, I was an adult by this time. I think I was like around 33 at this time, and I, had a family, had 2 daughters, and their dad and I, and, we had a house, car, jobs, and all that kind of thing, but I still felt like something in my life was missing, and so one day I was just laying across my bed thinking, there has to be more to life than this. And I remember I got a phone call from my Aunt Sherrell. She's someone I looked up to my whole life, and I was actually named after her as well. She called me and told me that God had put it on her heart to tell me that he had a plan for my life, that was bigger and better than anything I could imagine. And so she said if I wanted to find out that plan, that I would need to start going to church. And so I hadn't been to church, like I said, since I moved out of my parents' house at the age of 18, and I was now 33. But when she told me that, something on the inside of me just knew that what she was telling me was the truth. And so that was on a Saturday. The next day was Sunday, so I got me and my daughters ready, and we went to church. And I've been going back ever since. And
wow,
he told me that,
So God definitely used your aunt, didn't he? I mean, he uses people to get our attention.
Yes.
I want to ask you, where did you get the idea and the vision for living inside out?
Well, the vision came from a sermon that I had heard while I was getting ready for church one Sunday. And I had always loved fashion, so I always grew up loving fashion and everything. So this pastor was talking about how Christians need to live from the inside out and share what God's doing in their life. And as he was preaching this message, I just remember picturing a T-shirt that was inside out. And I thought, well, if my T-shirt's inside out, then maybe people would ask me why, and then that would give me a reason to share my faith with people.
Mm-hmm. And so
that's where the...
Okay. So obviously you didn't just start turning your T-shirts inside out, right? Or did you? Did you do that?
Yes.
Did you really?
Yeah, when I envisioned it, I literally thought of the shirt being inside out because I figured that's what's going to get people's attention. Like, why is your shirt inside out?
Right.
Because I knew that, God had done a lot of things in my life, but I was awkward to share it, and so I thought that would be a way to share it. So that's what God put in my heart, for the T-shirt to actually be inside out.
Okay. All right. So from there, you're thinking, okay, this T-shirt idea. So you actually put the words on the shirt then. So how did that come about?
Yes, I knew that I wanted the shirt to be inside out, and I knew I needed some kind of picture, logo, or something. So I got with a graphic artist, and I told her my idea, and she sort of helped me with the logo, and that's how that was born. And she came up with the idea to have the word inside, like a mirror, like it's backwards. Mm-hmm. Because, like, when you look in the mirror, you're looking at the person in the mirror. It's what's on the inside of you.
Right.
Because God lives on the inside of you, so...
I love that.
It worked out.
Okay, so did you actually do the T-shirts yourself, or did you have someone else do them for you?
I started doing them. I started having a screen printer do them, but it was getting kind of expensive to have them made, and then I'd have to, charge people for them. Mm-hmm. And so I started out that way, but then one day a coworker had told me that one of the screen print shops that my company owned was going out of business, and they had some things for sale. And so I didn't really think much of it. I thought maybe I'd go down there and buy some, T-shirts. They had a bunch of excess T-shirts, so I thought I'd go down there and buy some. They're selling them for 50 cents a piece, so I thought that's what I would go down there for. But then I noticed that the equipment was for sale as well. And so I inquired about the equipment, just to see how much it would cost. I knew that, that kind of equipment was very expensive, and I knew I didn't really have the money. But when the person got back to me that was selling the equipment, I couldn't believe it, but, it was very cheap. I could get everything I needed to start my own T-shirt business for basically under $200.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. That's a God thing, isn't it?
That is a God thing, yeah.
Okay, so did you learn how to do T-shirts? It's the heat press and all that, right?
Yeah, I got the silk screen, the conveyor belt dryer, the emulsion machine that burns. I got everything, and the heat press, all for... Actually, the heat press came later. It was another $200, so $400. I was able to get everything that I needed to start my T-shirt business. That
is amazing. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back for more Shaped by Faith. So everyone stay tuned. Welcome back to Shaped by Faith, where we shape our bodies and hearts for God's purposes. My guest, I'm so excited, on the phone is Sherrell Wallace, and she is right now in Galesburg, Illinois, where she lives. She's the founder of Living Inside Out T-shirt, and she now has a new podcast, which we're going to hear about in this segment, called Living Inside Out by Faith. So, Sherrell, before we took a break, we were talking about your T-shirt and, the message on the shirt, and I wanted you to, share with us if you have a personal story maybe about this shirt or how it impacted someone.
Yeah, when I imagine the shirt being inside out and getting people's attention, it really does. And so I remember one time wearing the shirt, and I think I was at the store, and a person asked me what that meant, living inside out, and I just sort of shared with her how it's about Christians just sharing what God's done in their life, and I told her my story of how I actually got it started, and I told her the story about me being a single mother and, really struggling, and she could really relate because she was a single mother as well, and she just told me that, my story was just a blessing to her because sometimes she feels lonely. And so I think the shirt just inspires people to, just open up about their own struggles, and then it just sort of gives hope to others.
Absolutely. Having a positive message like that and having that faith message behind it does catch the attention of people, whether they want to admit it or not, because there's so much negativity in the world, it seems, and just having that message of hope, because that's really the message, living on the inside, allowing Jesus Christ to come in your life and be Lord of your life. I mean, I can't wait till you get more T-shirts in, and I would like to get one. Are you going to have these shirts, Sherrell? Sorry about that, in different styles, or are you going to keep it a T-shirt, or what's your vision with the shirt?
Well, my vision is to have a lot of styles, hoodies and baseball tees and tank tops and all that, but I want to keep it simple. The first time that I, got started doing this, I just sort of got overwhelmed with, trying to keep up with all the different styles and just people, I would cater to certain scriptures that people wanted. And I just sort of started losing focus of what the reason that God gave me the vision for, which is to share more about Him, and it became more about, the styles. So, for now, I'm going to keep it simple with just probably a T-shirt, black. You can choose black or white. But eventually, I would like to get into different styles. I might do like once a month. I might do another style added onto that. So
okay, are you going to do these yourself?
Yes, I like to do them myself just because I like to add that personal touch.
Mm-hmm.
Stick a note in there and just be able to pray over the shirts. But if God blesses me to get really big, then that might not be as possible, not be quite as possible. So, but yeah, I definitely would like to do them myself. I still have my heat press, and so.
All right. Okay, I can't wait till they come out. Okay, so, during this time, some people are still at home during the COVID-19 and the pandemic. How has God been speaking to you during this time?
Well, God, I was so busy before this pandemic started, working 2 jobs, still being a single mother, and I felt like, I think I even prayed, I was like, oh, God, I wish I just had more time to focus on what you would have me to do. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't too long, the pandemic started, so I was really able to refocus and really just listen to God through the Bible, through just, sermons at church, and God was really started speaking to me that now is the time to tell or just live out the vision that He had given me. So,
let's talk about that. And I love the refocus, because I think that is what the Lord would want all of us to do, wanted us to do during that time, and still wants us to do, to maintain our focus on Him. So to refocus so that, we can clearly see where He's wanting us to go and clearly hear from Him in our prayer time. So you have this new podcast, and I wanted you to tell us about that. It's called Living Inside Out by Faith. So is this one of the things that came out of that quiet time?
Yes, because I had taken a hiatus from selling T-shirts because I wanted to refocus on what, the vision God gave me, which was people sharing what He has done in their lives. And so over a year ago, I actually bought podcast equipment, and like I said, I was so busy, I didn't really get time to do anything with it. So during this pandemic, I got it out and learned how to use it, because I didn't even know how to use it. And God just put it on my heart, just share stories of what I've done in people's lives. And so Living Inside Out by Faith is about people not only sharing what God has done in their lives, but how they're using their God-given talents, abilities, and gifts to make a difference in the world. So that's what I share on the podcast. I also share my own story of what God's done in my life, and then people can hear my journey as I'm living out my faith and what God's shown me to do.
So how often do you do the podcast?
I do it once a week. It comes out every Sunday.
Okay.
And, yes, it's...
So where can people listen or even subscribe to it?
You can subscribe and listen to pretty much any podcast platform. There's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, pretty much anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Stitcher.
Okay. And you also have a Facebook page, right?
Yes, I got my Living Inside Out by Faith Facebook page. People can reach out to me there. You can DM me, or I try to get on there and post inspirational things. I've been sort of busy, and I don't get on there every time, but I try to do that. I'm going to try to do that more often.
When you mentioned using equipment and learning how to use it, I'm telling you what, that's a hard one for me. You said you had bought the equipment for the podcast, and and then you had to learn how to use it. I think sometimes it's, we're like, okay, Lord, we're willing to do this. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to learn something new,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a challenge. Yeah. And so it kind of, test our obedience. Like, are you going to do what God has asked you to do? And are you going to learn that? I have that, Sherrell, with like the computer and my kids make fun of me all the time. I mean, I'm like, we didn't even have a computer in school, much less an electric typewriter. So come on, cut me some slack here. But, this younger generation, they're growing up with all this technology. And now I watch my grandchildren, they're swiping, on the phone at a very early age. And I'm like, wow, these children are growing up, with all this technology available to them. But, for someone like me, it is definitely a challenge to learn it, because I know that God is calling us, especially when you have a platform like yours, He's calling you to expand it as well, on social media, so that it gets out there on the internet so everyone can see it. But it's just, by His grace and, allowing Him to help you out. I think that's awesome that you did take those steps, and then here you are now, and that how ironic that you had that quiet time at home to actually focus on learning how to do that. That's awesome. So anyway, I just want to thank you for doing that. And I think so many people will be blessed by your podcast. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, I want to hear about some of your guests and maybe, some topics. And if you're looking for guests for your podcast. So everyone stay tuned for more Shaped by Faith coming up next. Welcome back to Shaped by Faith, where we shape our bodies and hearts for God's purposes. Well, we're speaking with Sherrell she's a friend, and we've known each other through through the phone and on the internet, right?
Yes.
God placed us together. So you're talking about your Living Inside Out by Faith, your podcast. So we were talking about that before the break. So Sherrell, are you looking for guests? And if so, what are you looking for in a guest?
Yes, I'm definitely looking for guests. I just started this podcast that actually launched on May 25th. And so I started off with people that I knew, basically looking for Christians who have a testimony to share what God's done in their life. And also a lot of my guests, I guess, are using their talents, abilities, and gifts to make a difference in the world because of what God has done in their life. And so, like, for instance, I interviewed you just earlier last week or this week, and because, you know, you shared what God has done in your life, and now you're using your faith to make a difference in the world by shaping people's bodies. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm basically looking for guests who would like to share their testimony and share what they're doing to make a difference in the world. I've had guests on who, like one person, he always dealt with suicidal thoughts and tendencies, and he tells his story of how God worked in his life, how God just showed up, and how that made a difference in his life. And now he's using his talents as a Christian rapper to travel around the world and just bring hope to those who don't quite fit in, because he had a story where he just didn't quite fit in, and so he reaches out to people who feel that way. Another guest, she was a single mother struggling, and she shares how her own hardships as being a single mother inspired her to start her non-for-profit, which is a diaper bank where she provides diapers for families in need. And so God has really grown her ministry as well. So I just like to share those kind of stories and inspire people to just put their faith into action. So, I mean, you don't have to be doing anything huge. You know, it doesn't have to be a business or anything, but just something that God's put in your heart to do because of how grateful you are for what he's done in your life.
That's awesome. And that's given God a shout out, the entire program on what God has done in that person's life. So that's awesome. That's so positive. And that's so, you know, it lines up with the word, because we're supposed to be sharing with others our testimony and our stories. And from hearing and listening, you know, it will point people to Jesus Christ. You know, you're planting that seed. What's your vision for Living Inside Out? Do you have any vision for the future?
Yes. I guess my vision for the future is that Christians all over the world will share what God has done in their life. And it doesn't just have to be on a podcast and just be in your everyday life. And then that's why I created the T-shirt, so that people will notice your T-shirt, notices Inside Out, notice the Living Inside Out logo, and be like, oh, that person has a story, and that they will be inspired to ask that person their story, and that person will be inspired to share their story, just because, like you said, God has called us all to share the good news, which, you know, is about his son, Jesus Christ, who died on the cross and rose up again, but now he's living on the inside of us, and so I think our stories are a way to share that good news with others. Absolutely.
Sherrell, thank you so much for being a guest on Shaped by Faith.
You're welcome. It's such a pleasure to be back with you. It's been 4 years, and so this is awesome to see what God's done in your ministry, and you're an inspiration to me, and I just thank you for allowing me to be on.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. And thank you for listening. I'm Theresa Rowe. Everyone have a blessed day.